Hello and welcome back to another episode of Rebound with Resilience, a podcast dedicated to raise your resilience, mindset, and mental wellness. On this episode, we have someone with a very strong will and an even bigger heart. She's a social worker, a mental health advocate, a volunteer leader for over 5 years, and in that time, she has served many people with mental health conditions who are struggling with their mental health, and also organized a lot of initiatives for the community to spread mental health awareness. And I dare say her work actually changes and saves lives. So we're very fortunate to actually host Xavier Tan on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, just to do a brief introduction of yourself, Xavier. You have a nice name, by the way.
Thank you.
It's a very unique name. Do you know what your name means?
My dad say it means intelligent and pure.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's strange because I don't have a brother named Xavier.
Okay.
People always ask me that. So
Serious?
Yeah, I don't have a brother named Xavier.
But what's your brother's name then?
Isaac. It's
I-
completely different.
Okay, but Xavier and Xavier is a bit much lah.
Yeah.
Imagine then okay. But anyway, yeah, just share a brief introduction of yourself. Like I know you graduated recently and yeah.
Actually, I graduated last year from NTU. I was studying psychology. So currently, I'm doing my graduate diploma in social work.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm currently working in the elder care sector. So like you mentioned, I'm also a volunteer leader in the mental health scene.
Right. That was what actually really, I wouldn't say impressed, but what I respect the most. Because we first got in touch because of a mutual friend, Jonathan. Right. That we did a podcast.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that I thought her name is Xavier. Did I say Xavier Tan just now?
I think so.
Did I say Xavier Tan? Oh my goodness. Did I say Xavier Craig? No, right? I said Xavier
No,
Tan,
I think
right?
Tan.
Okay. Because Xavier Craig, Jonathan Craig is basically someone I've also interviewed. He's a mental health researcher and he actually leads the volunteer movement together with you.
Yeah.
So I've known him through you, through him, and also did a panel, online kind of panel together.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I was really just touched by the way you share about your experiences and I just wanted to invite you on the show just to share
Thank you.
value to the audience. Okay, don't worry, just relax. Like I said, I have no idea what I'm doing also. So don't worry, just sure.
Okay.
It's a conversation. Okay. So today we're gonna talk about maybe just brief because I understand you have gone through certain struggles and you're quite open to talk about it. So we will kind of explore that a little bit. And then after that we'll transition into talking about your experience as a volunteer. How do we combat stigma in mental health in Singapore? Yeah. And a lot of guests, right, listeners, one question I get asked a lot is how can I help someone? I did not sure how to help somebody. How can I help myself? So we might actually touch on that.
Okay, sure.
Okay, yeah. So just give me a brief background. Do you have any interests or influences growing up?
Influences. Actually, when I was growing up, most children would say that they admire their parents.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't really have anyone. Yeah, I'm close to my parents, but they would just want someone that I really looked up to. But since young, I do realize that I enjoy talking to people a lot. Yeah, and I enjoy writing as well. So yeah, these are two things that I think still stick with me today.
Okay. Just talking to people, were you a CCA leader back then already?
No, I was a troublemaker in school.
Really?
Yes.
It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, so I was never a student leader, but I often find myself leading.
Right.
Yeah, let's do this,
Notoriously
class
leading
initiatives.
gang. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So but you how were you a troublemaker?
I talk back a lot to teachers. Yeah, and I didn't really have good friendships, relationships with people around me. So yeah, I didn't really have a strong social support, but just always making trouble. So I suspect that was because I needed attention, which I didn't get from my parents.
Okay. Was that throughout your even growing up all the way into university? I know university was a time where you actually was compounded. But before that, were there any signs of distress or esteem wise? Was it something that you struggled with?
Yes, because actually in primary school I started going through puberty, and then there's the weight gain for females and I got bullied a lot for my weight by guys. And so I think that kind of started my body image issues and self-esteem issues. And there were also teachers that commented on it, which until today I can still remember what they said.
That's horrible. Could I ask you to share it?
It's actually
Is it too
small.
sensitive?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm okay sharing. It's
Yeah.
just maybe it doesn't seem that serious now, but I remember there was a teacher that I was very sleeveless, and then she told me like, "Oh wow, I look like a gorilla with my arms really big and stuff."
No, that is serious.
Yeah, I was only 8 years old, and I still remember it today. And until today, I still find it hard to wear sleeveless clothes.
Wow, that's crazy. Like that's actually not small, honestly speaking. Yeah, but in any case, I guess people are not perfect. And how did you kind of were you affected by it growing up? How do you deal with it?
I think I didn't cope with it well because my family are very health conscious as well. So my parents do comment on my weight quite a bit, and they still do now. And for me, I always find myself like trying to look at myself from another person's eyes, like, oh no, how are they perceiving me? Am I like really too fat and stuff like that? So it makes me very conscious about my diet. And I have a very unhealthy relationship with food as a result.
I see. Don't mind if I ask, if it's too sensitive, we'll cut it out, okay? I'm always very, very, very concerned.
No problem.
But did you also had issues like with your eating disorders wise or?
I don't have eating disorders, but I do have a tendency to binge eat.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's no like purging and stuff.
Right,
but
right.
yeah, there's a binge eat, and then there's a series of like guilt and like feeling very shitty about myself and like spiraling into depression because of eating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually not uncommon. Like I was watching, I think Kara's probably not listening to this. She's a host on like Smart Local. She was my tennis student before. So I watched her videos. But on Smart Local, she's a host for a food show. I think Eat Book. So recently she also shared like very similar themes to what you're actually talking about.
I saw it on my YouTube recommends. I haven't watched it yet though.
Well, yeah, this is the algorithm. Yeah, but she's my tennis student and I'm glad for her. She's a really good host, but she also like you said very similar because when you mentioned like immediately that triggered my thoughts. So I thought maybe that would help. Okay, so moving to university and JC, where did you go JC as well?
Yeah, I went to JC.
JC, how was JC? Quick summary, snapshot.
Okay, so shared about my... so in secondary school, I got diagnosed with dysthymia.
Oh,
yeah.
What's that?
Persistent depressive disorder.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So it's basically a kind of depression whereby it's chronic. So there's not necessarily a suicidal tendency, but it's diagnosed after you have experienced like low moods and loss of interest for a period of 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's persistent depressive disorder.
Okay. And you took medication for that? Therapy?
Yes, I had both, but I didn't really I wasn't very compliant.
Okay. And that carried through to JC, I believe, in some sense.
Yeah, and in JC, I did share about my depression, and it didn't turn out very well. So there were people saying that like I fake it because I'm quite loud. Quite loud and cheerful. So people were like, oh, she's lying about her depression, stuff like that. And that kind of made me clam up. So I didn't really like talk about my depression that openly until more recently.
Yeah, in fact, before you came here, I asked you like, is it okay we share? And I appreciate your vulnerability here and the fact that you have kind of moved on and helped so many people in a similar situation, which we will get to eventually. But coming back to JC, right? So I think JC was tough because of that. I must imagine it's very difficult because no one understands you. You have to just go through it, study. It's so stressful. But you did well enough to eventually get into university. But that was where that spiral started to happen.
It started a spiral, which is strange because university was kind of the best time of my life as well.
Okay. And could you elaborate a little bit more about that? How did it was the events that led up to you eventually having to of course, this is the title of the podcast suggests you were arrested for attempted suicide, but let's talk about the events that led up to it.
I would say studies is of course the most because I'm not sure if it's the same for other majors, but for at least psychology, year 1 and year 2, there's a very huge jump. Suddenly you're taking a lot more modules. I was very stressed about my results. And also in a toxic relationship. So my ex-partner wasn't very supportive. Apart from that, I was also staying in hostel. I was staying in a single room and I felt homesick. And the environment was such that I didn't really have any friends in hall. Yeah, so it started, just felt very isolated.
Okay. Was it a daily battle? Was it like more or less daily battle? Like every day you wake up and like I know I've been there before as well. Like the moment you wake up, you feel that life is shitty. Like it's tough to just start off the day knowing that like you feel this way.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been so difficult. Could I backtrack a little bit and talk about, say, being in a relationship? Because I know maybe some listeners might want to know more about it. What are the things to look out for? What was it that led you to conclude that it might have not been good for you?
Actually, I only concluded that after the relationship ended. Yeah, and I only realized it was toxic because it was such a codependent relationship. Like I really needed him. He was gaslighting quite a bit, and it came to a point where I needed him to rationalize my feelings for me. If not, I couldn't do it alone. Yeah, so that wasn't good for my mental health.
Sure. Will you explain a bit what gaslighting is?
Okay, so it's like implanting like so-called false memories or making you feel bad for something you actually feel valid for feeling. So if I bring up that I'm sad or upset over something he did, he will rationalize, and then at the end of the day, I'll find myself apologizing to him.
Yeah. So it's kind of manipulating your reality in some sense. Okay. So coming out of that, what was there a particular moment where that thought entered your mind that it's better for me not to be around?
Actually, he ended it.
Yeah. I meant, okay, he ended it. I actually meant in terms of like suicidal thoughts wise. Like not for me to be around like in life. You get my question?
Okay.
Sorry, I was on the...
What made it reach a point where I felt like it would be better for me not to be... Okay, I understand. I guess because I cope with stress, one of my unhealthy coping mechanisms is spending money.
Okay.
And my parents were commenting on it. But I feel like I couldn't stop. There's this compulsive urge to like eat and spend money. So I felt like I was a very useless daughter. And my brother is a high flyer, so I couldn't help but compare myself with him. And it's like, oh, my parents would be so much better without me, and just have my brother who's such a high flyer who's able to make them proud. Okay. And relationship-wise, I felt like, I'm always, no matter what I say to him, I'm always wrong. So maybe it's better if I'm gone and then he can find someone else. Yeah.
Sure. And when that happened, could you share about where did it happen and what happened after that? When you attempted that to take your own life?
So what happened was that I think it was like in the midnight on one of the weekdays, and I had an argument with this partner of mine, and I just completely snapped. Yeah, so I found myself like this. I suddenly didn't feel myself anymore. Yeah, and so I wrote a suicide note, and I kind of like sent it to my friends, and I was just ignoring calls and messages, and just like trying my best not to, just find a single like spark of hope.
Okay.
So it was like a very huge struggle. Like the urge was so strong.
Oh my gosh, serious. I'm getting chills listening to that. Like, I don't think people know that like the whole body like it's actually designed to stop you from doing that. Like if you look over, you realize that there's actually a right? Because I've done it before also. Like looked over the window, and during that period it was difficult, right? But every time I look down, it's like, man, that thing. Yeah. So eventually, like, what happened? Like, what made you stop?
Okay, so because I wasn't answering the phone and like my messages, so my friends called the police and the campus like police lah. So there were two groups of people, and they came knocking at my door. Yeah, and then like I kind of like snapped out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I opened the door lah and let them in. So.
Oh, that's crazy. Like, do you think that if your friends didn't call, like, you would have?
I think that might be a high chance. Yes.
Oh my gosh, are you freaking serious?
Yeah, because it's a very out of body experience. It's like I can't control myself. I really needed to do it.
Oh my.
Yeah, that kind of feeling. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Now I can understand a little bit better. When you mentioned about how it's out of body and it's not you anymore. Okay, but I'm so glad you're around. Like, I'm really glad. Like, just listening to you like makes me happy, because like to know that you're now serving so many people and making good of your life, right? But share the experience with the police. Like, how did they treat you? What was going through?
Okay, it was terrible because they actually came with 2 police cars for one person. There were, I can't remember the exact number actually, but there was more than, I think it was 4 of them, and the walkie-talkies were very loud. So the entire corridor could hear them coming.
Right.
And I've just felt very like embarrassed and ashamed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember this one particular policeman, the first thing he told me was, why so stressed? Like, at most just drop out of NTU lah, go to a private university. And he said that without even understanding why I felt like killing myself. And then he said like, oh, your parents will be like very sad, stuff like that, which made me feel even worse about myself.
Yeah. I think honestly, like EQ, it's really hard. Like it's underrated, but it's really hard to develop EQ. And I think in his intentions, if I were to speak up for him, that is probably the best way he's showing love. That being said, I still think it's incredibly difficult because I've been in a situation where I have certain things told to me, and in that state that I'm in, right, it hurt a lot, lah.
Yeah.
Because you know that it just hurt so much, and I must and you know I feel like I can empathize with you so much because like I mean I will not understand your pain fully, but knowing that you have just there was so much pain that you were in, right, to actually consider that action, and then having someone come in and say this, right? Oh man, okay. And where did you go after that? Where did they take you?
So a female policeman actually checked my
Okay.
everything, and then they put handcuffs on me and escorted me down to the first floor.
They put handcuffs on
Yes,
you?
they put handcuffs on me. And it was like 1 a.m., 1 a.m.
Yeah.
in the night. So like there were some people that came out to see what happened, and I was just so embarrassed because that was before the mask era, like my face was fully showed. Yeah.
Okay, and then you had to put in a holding area. What did they say to you, and eventually how were you released?
So they told me that we were going to IMH. Actually, it's a lot of, like that day was very surreal. So I'm just going to piece together parts that I remember most of lah. So I remember on the police car, my brother called me and he's like, why the police flying for you? Then before I could answer, the person beside me, she was like, you're not supposed to answer your phone. You're being arrested, Yeah, so I like, okay. Then I put down the phone. I was like, why is she so serious? So scary. And then after that, I went to the police cell. They said that they will bring me to IMH.
Okay.
But what I didn't know is that I will only be going to IMH the next morning. So I was stuck in that cell for 5 hours without knowing. And I was hungry because I skipped dinner. I just kept asking for food. And then they didn't want to give me any food. They kept telling me, wait a minute. But then I waited for hours. There was no food. Yeah, and the conditions were just terrible. When you were thirsty, there was like a hole in the wall. You supposed to press a button, then the water comes out of the hole. So it's like very...
How does... I'm trying to imagine that. That's...
Yeah, so you press the button, the hole comes out of the wall, and it doesn't come out like
from
that.
it? Like, what, is there like a sprout?
It's just a hole, you drink from it.
Huh?
So it doesn't come out like that. It's like very weak.
Okay.
So I will end up like licking the wall. So I just didn't drink water the whole night.
Wow.
Yeah, and you also have to pee in front of camera. It's all in the same room.
Oh, I see. I guess people who so-called commit more serious like crimes, I guess you can argue that that's justified, like their treatment. Then again, like I don't want to go into moral discussions here, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you're just kind of taking your own life and thinking of taking your own life and like the emotional state you're in to be exacerbated by the experience there has to be some measure in place somewhere to say that, okay, if this person is considering you, at least treat her a bit better lah. No?
Yeah, I guess. And yeah, at that point in time, I was just thinking, oh my god, if I do it again, I'm just going to make sure I succeed so I don't go through this again. Yeah.
Okay. So coming out, I think your parents came. Your parents had to come, and how were you eventually built out?
So they brought me to IMH first to do a psychiatry assessment. And before I was cut off contact with everyone else, my ex then was telling me, don't make sure you don't get warded in IMH. So I just kind of lied to the psychiatrist, like, oh, everything's fine, like I'm not depressed, I'm perfectly fine. And then so I got sent back to the police station instead of warded. Yeah, and at the police station, they asked me to call my father. And my father was very shocked. And I was also very shocked because the night before I asked the police, like, do my parents know? Because I didn't want to worry them. And they told me my parents knew. But the first thing I told my father, like I called my father, I was like, Daddy, can you bail me out? Then he's like, huh? He had he didn't know at all.
Right.
Yeah, so I just felt very lied to and deceived.
Yeah. Okay. Just must be very shocking for him lah.
Yeah.
So how was the recovery process like for you? Like, because you're not warded, were you given like medication? How was the recovery process like for you?
So even though I wasn't warded, I had to make an appointment and return.
Okay.
And at that point, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after, and I've thought things through and I realized that, you know what, I'm gonna seek professional help.
Okay.
So I asked to be referred to a therapist, like a psychologist, and I was also put on medication.
Okay. Share with us how that helped you.
For the medication, it did help me stabilize my mood quite a lot. But I think therapy was the largest, the largest and strongest saving grace for me, because I had a very supportive therapist who she was she was very empathetic, but she was also willing to challenge my negative thoughts and my biases, which I value a lot.
Okay. So that was probably very helpful for you, lah. Just talking to her, understanding yourself
Yeah.
better. Again, I think that's important thing for listeners to know, because it's very pervasive. I think you also notice that people are very afraid of seeking help, and not understandably so, especially because of all the experiences they have gone through, right? But it is there are good things out there, lah. I mean, to anyone listening, there are good people out there, and you will find someone that can relate to you if you seek it, lah. I know some people are difficult because they say they cannot relate to their counselor or whatever. But I do believe if you seek, eventually you find someone that you can connect with and will help you in that regard. Just like how she helped you.
Actually, on that note, I was referred to a psychologist before that, but I didn't really click with her.
Okay.
So I kind of changed the next psychologist.
Yeah.
So I think really psychologist and client, it's like a goodness of fit thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really depending on compatibility. So even if you don't meet a psychologist you really click with, I feel like one, try not to give up and try and find someone that you can really click with.
Thank you. I mean, coming from you, I think that's powerful advice. Coming from me, I'm just a third person, right? But coming from someone that you have experienced before, hopefully people can take the advice to heart. Yeah. Anyway, I'm really glad that you got better from then on, and then you went through school, graduated. But in that time also you started volunteering. So talk to me about volunteering. You started to volunteer. When was that?
I actually started volunteering right after my A-level, so it was way before university.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I wanted to do psychology since secondary school.
Okay.
I told myself that if I want to work in mental health, I should get myself exposed to individuals with mental health conditions.
Sure.
So I started volunteering in
Okay.
this field.
Did that have any impact on your because this is just coming from me, right? I just feel that when you volunteered initially, that might have been a preventive mechanism to make you feel as if okay, to cope better with your own stresses, lah. But you were volunteering and still having issues at that time. Okay.
I think for me, volunteering, I enjoyed it because of the beneficiaries, the residents I meet.
Okay.
Yeah, so initially it was perhaps curiosity and the desire to expose myself, but I ended up staying for them lah. So I don't think it really relates to my mental health.
Okay. Speaking of that as a separate entity, right? What are some insights? Because you have organized many events, you have worked with schools, organizations, you have gone to schools to give sharings on mental health awareness. You have done initiatives like create a journal during COVID period for people with mental health conditions to help them journal and reflect. Let's talk about this. What is some major lessons or insights that you have picked up from volunteering?
From volunteering, so I think even for an individual with mental health struggles, we have our own stigma and self-stigma. So actually through volunteering and interacting with individuals with mental health conditions, it kind of helps me to disperse my own the own stigma I have, because you realize that regardless of how serious your mental health condition is, they're still individuals with their own stories, and even individuals with similar diagnosis have different personalities. So I kind of learned to see each and every one of them as individuals, not like a person with the mental illness as their label.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very big point, because when we did a panel, you also shared that certain small experiences that really help you realize that they are humans and they are not too different from us. It feels almost like we classify them as people with mental health conditions as disordered responses, individualized responses. But mental health in general, right, just the word itself should show you that it's universal. Everybody's mind is important and everybody's mental health is important.
Yes.
So why are we, I guess for the sake of classification, we have to kind of classify and no choice lah. Understand that. But one lesson I learned from you is really not to judge and stereotype people lah, I would say. And your experience in volunteering actually helped with really realizing that whatever you portray in media, whatever people understand about it's not the case. Yeah. Can you share a bit more how that
Okay, so because of this experience I have lah in with volunteering. So I decided to use that to actually encourage youth students to volunteer and expose themselves to individuals with mental health conditions. So that they can also go through that similar experience of combating stigma through direct exposure. So we actually for me lah, my group, we organized outreach to these schools. We encourage them to come on board, try out some sessions with us. Yeah, and then we also organize some sessions like whereby we facilitated mental health conversations.
Okay. Talk to me about those things. What's the greatest gratitude that you gain from it? Are there any moments where you specifically appreciate about those things?
Okay, so I think sometimes people are like, individuals they don't know what to do they don't know what to say in a situation whereby there's mental health involved. So, but what I realized that if actually you have a right environment, right tone, and a good facilitator, the conversations can happen, and that's what happened during when we are interacting with the students.
Okay. Yeah, and actually students nowadays, they have empathy. It's not that they don't have, like they actually feel for people.
Yeah.
But they just need the context for it to come out.
Yeah.
Right? And research shows that the context matters. The environment in which you allow students to express that trait. So the fact that you're providing that context and environment is very powerful. And I truly hope that with MOE's focus on mental health this year and following CCE years, right, that there will be more of such context in which people can demonstrate empathy and understand. Do you have any advice for people who want to help someone around them but not sure how to? Yeah.
I think this is a very common advice which
Yeah.
everyone hears. It's really to just be there. Yeah, but having said that, I understand it's not easy because sometimes, people who struggle with their mental health, they're always kind of fixated or stuck on the same problem.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm a shitty person,
Yeah.
It might be very tough to absorb that. So, first of all, I would really just be there and suspend all judgment or don't feel the need to solve the problem for the individual.
Okay.
Yeah, and secondly, it's also self-care. Self-care is very important when caring for someone else struggling.
Okay. What are some ways you can do that?
Self-care, I think communication is very important as well. So, for example, if you're really not feeling it, you don't have the energy, don't force yourself to, because sometimes it comes out in ways that may be perceived as negative by the other person. So just be honest, tell the person like, you know what, I actually need some time off to process this, and then I'll get back to you later. Okay, so honesty and communication is really important.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I do have experiences helping people with struggles. And in that state, of course, not as mature as I am now. Like when I just came out of depression, I just talked to many people because I made a video then. I'm not sure whether you saw it. I made a stupid video, and then a lot of people, but funny enough, a lot of people actually reached out to me, and I actually spoke to them. And it was very stressful on my mental state to take on that much burden, and we're not professionally trained, right? So I think it's important for people to realize that you do have to take time off and operate in an environment where there are other people also involved.
Yes.
It cannot just be you as a single entity. It has to be maybe the counselors, maybe they're going to someone, a case manager, whatever, or even a community as well. That is so important. And you provide spaces for people like that. So I'm so happy and I respect you for that so much. What are some visions you have for, the space lah? I would say in Singapore, right, the mental health scene, what is the vision you have that we can work towards?
The first one that I feel most passionate about would be definitely media portrayal of mental health conditions. Okay. Yeah, so advocating towards how media, like newspaper reports how they frame an individual mental health conditions, or even drama series and documentaries, more documentaries on different mental health conditions, to show that some people with the same mental health conditions, they are still individuals because they're different, even though they have the same diagnosis. Yeah.
Okay. What about culture-wise? Is there anything you'd like to see as a culture?
Culture-wise, definitely more conversations, but I think that has been improving over the years. There's definitely more conversations about it. But I think it's also good culture-wise to engage individuals who are maybe not in the mental health scene. They do not have the condition or they are not passionate about it. It'll be great to still engage them because mental health struggles don't happen to it happens to anyone and everyone, and reaching out to people who do not necessarily like feel that strongly about it is still beneficial.
Yes, it is. It is a whole lot. Like spreading awareness in the education level and then society. What are some things that you are looking forward to in the next couple of years? I know it's a very like different kind of question, but other things you're passionate about that you're looking forward to doing or experiencing?
For me, honestly, actually a few days ago, I just had my psychiatric appointment and I'm going back to therapy and also changing medication. So for me, it's looking forward to looking towards continuing my recovery journey, because it feels like I'm going back to square one. But yeah, recovery isn't linear. So for me, it's to continue growing in the process. And career-wise, I'm hoping to pursue my master's and work in the community healthcare setting.
Wow.
Yeah.
All the best to you. I think you make a great addition and asset to whatever space that you're in.
Thank you.
I think this is the last one or two questions I would like to ask you before we close this podcast is, like, people listening to this, they might be struggling with their mental health or just in anyone, right? Like, what helps you now? I know it's a constant journey, right? Like, what helps you? What has been factors that has helped you to be resilient and also really go through all these difficulties?
I think it's super important to, it's difficult, but it's important to force yourself to have an open mindset and just be open to any sort of feedback you get. And for me, I do journaling. And when I journal, I can see my thoughts and biases on a piece of paper. And I actively challenge these thoughts. So having that openness is super important in my opinion.
That's one advice you would give, right? And specific encouragement for people that, I'm just going to be blunt about it, right? Like having suicidal thoughts and thinking of taking their own life, right? Do you have anything to share with them?
For me, I'll do it. Okay, there's a research perspective. There's research that shows that people who survive their suicide attempts, 2 years down the road, they're actually a lot happier than they were before. And for me, I definitely say that I'm in a much better place than I was before. So I know it's super difficult to see that things will get better, but it can and will get better. And do reach out to people who will really be there for you throughout it. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Jerilyn. I resonate with that and I second that because that's exactly how I felt 7 years ago in the same room, looking out that window, thinking my life is going to be a shell of a person I used to be. And I believed it with 1000% on my heart. But the fact that we can both come out, share our story, impact lives, save lives, I think, I hope that you all can take encouragement from that. And really live on and cling on to any hope that you can get. Okay, I guess this is a good end to the podcast. Thanks once again, Jerilyn.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, please give you some time to promote your spaces, the places you're part of. Just share.
Sure. Yeah.
So where can we find you and the organizations that you are working with?
Okay, organizations. I'm currently volunteering in a volunteer group called Matchsticks.
Okay.
So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I mainly do my work, my community work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matchsticks. Do you also do psych society?
Yes, I do volunteer for the Singapore Psychological Society. Yeah. But I'm doing more background designing work.
Matchsticks. Matchsticks. So follow Matchsticks and of course personal Instagram. I will link that up as well if you want to follow on Instagram. Okay. If you have any, of course, further questions, you can reach out to Jerilyn. I'm sure you okay with that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm okay.
You just take any questions, but. Yeah, we've come to an end of another podcast. Solemn, but of course, I hope that you've taken back some hope from it and some advice and tips from it. All right, stay resilient, stay healthy, and we'll see you the next time. Bye.